the big problem is false assumptions and the outcome point of view of these uniformitarian evolutionists. They want the outcome to be what they want it to be. So whatever tool they're going to use, they'll throw out what isn't useful, regardless of whether it's scientifically arrived at it or not. False assumptions. Introduction. So the presuppositions which accompany today's dating procedures are to be questioned. Recall that the creation process, according to God's Word, was begun and completed in 6 24-hour days. Then after the fall, there began another process of thousands of years of devolution, not evolution, which went through an unimaginable change at the flood. Radiation content of elements in the Earth most likely had different starting points than are assumed for today's dating experiments. Starting point might be external radiation when the worldwide flood started. And the radioactivity in the elements within the Earth was also inevitably affected by the dramatic changes during worldwide volcanic eruptions and earthquakes and the consequent fall of the Canopy and the ensuing flood in Noah's time. You got the earthquakes and the volcanoes exposed elements in the Earth to more exposure of external radiation. The dating methods now used assume that the Earth evolved over billions of years, assumed, false assumption, and that it never existed in the perfect form that it was in before the fall and the flood. Today's devolution is not the same as the creation process, nor the same as an imaginary evolutionary one. For example, could not God have originally created certain specific types and amounts of non-radioactive elements for a purpose? This would be quite different from what modern-day geologists presume as the status of the Earth being the same after the fall. In other words, it is very likely that within the core of the Earth, God created radioactive elements packed in alongside those moderating or non-radioactive elements, like lead, in order to provide a consistently controlled nuclear reaction. Those controlling elements could very well have been the elements like lead, strontium-87, which the radioactive elements evolved into after dispensing with their radioactivity. But what about original lead? This would certainly throw off the dating theory, which assumes non-zero radioactivity content at the onset. Activity, according to the creation model in God's Word, there must be non-radioactive elements originally present. Thus, the Earth could only be thousands of years old. Finally, if carbon dating is so accurate, how come it has been reported that some living snails and living trees were recorded as being 2,500 and 10,000-year-old fossils, but they're still walking around? They're obviously slowly, but nevertheless. So this may appear to many to be a surprising assertion, i.e. that the evidence testifies to the flood and other catastrophic events rather than to millions of evolutionary years. But a little consideration should suffice to show its validity. The whole problem revolves about the basic assumptions implicit in all of the radioactivity methods of measurement. In addition to the problems of measurement and alteration already discussed, there are two basic assumptions always present. One is that all of the identified radiogenic isotope has been derived from the parent isotope by radioactive disintegration. The other is that the rate of disintegration has always been the same as it is at present. Well, we've already looked at external radiation, which probably sped it up quite a bit. A friend of mine talked to me about finding some hammers, really well-formed hammers, evidently with no magnetism. Now, you can't find iron around there without some sort of magnetism. Well, that's because of external radiation exposing the metal somehow. And before the worldwide flood, we had no such exposure. Both these assumptions are absolutely necessary in order to obtain any kind of meaningful age measurement. But neither assumption can possibly be valid if the Bible account is true. They implicitly deny the two divinely revealed facts of genuine creation and at least one great discontinuity in the uniform process of nature at the time of the deluge. Dr. Boss says, evolutionists maintain that there are elements in the rock, such as radioisotopes, which indicate an Earth age of millions and in some instances billions of years. There is no data significantly scientifically known which can give a rock a uniform age. All of the processes for dating radioisotopic material and alpha particle decay known to science give a variant in age determination when various portions of the same rock are examined. So how do you say a fossil is so old? Depends upon where in that particular rock, according to that rock. Was it to the left? It's 3 billion years old. To the right? It's a couple of million. So when the alpha particle decay rate is examined, which is the interpretive line of measurement, it is found that it takes uranium-238 over 4 billion years to lose half its mass. The line of reasoning goes that it had to have been around for at least 4.5 billion years to have lost that much mass. This is not necessarily so. It really shows that U-238 was designed to be around for billions of years, and it was designed to be here for a useful purpose. It is obvious from the work of geophysicists that these isotopes were at one time inside the Earth. We found uranium inside the Earth a lot. You have to dig up the Earth deeply to get it. They were expunged or thrown out to the surface of the Earth by earthquakes, volcanoes, and so on. What this demonstrates is that the interior of the Earth at some time in the past was a perfectly balanced thermonuclear heater. If those isotopic elements are so arranged, with moderating elements adjacent to them, the result is simply a controlled nuclear reactor. We have those. We've made them. A little bit poorly designed as of late. God designed the interior of the Earth as such for the benefit of mankind, setting perfect temperatures. Point 2. Presupposition that decay rates are uniform is wrong. Regardless of whether or not the original mineral was set to read a certain finite time at the instant of its creation, we still could not know for certainty what this original condition had been, since we cannot know to what extent the rate of decay has varied over that time, since that time. It is possible, of course, to measure or estimate the decay rates as they exist now for each of the radioactive series and for each stage in the series, and this has been done. As we have seen, considerable question still exists as to the proper value for many of these decay constants, but the values of all the important ones are known to at least the right order of magnitude. And, of course, the claim is made that these decay rates never change and that it is, therefore, legitimate to use them in the computation of ages. Now, we just had a discussion there that if the protective covering over the Earth, this super frozen ice canopy, is removed by one means or another, earthquakes, volcanoes busted it up, ice super cold, comes down to warmer temperatures, becomes rain 40 days or 40 nights. What about all that external radiation, the Van Allen radiation, or cosmic radiation? Evolutionists claim that all applicable extremes of temperature, pressure, physical state, chemical combination, and so on, have been applied to the radioactive elements without any significant indication of resulting changes in the disintegration constant. It is falsely claimed that no past change in terrestrial environments, as conceived according to uniformitarian principles, which are wholly and falsely assumed because you weren't there, could have been outside the scope of these laboratory studies. It is therefore also falsely maintained that the decay rates have never changed. Problem is, we can now do laboratory experiments that show it does change. We have cyclotrons and stuff. There is nothing basically inviolable about these decay rates, however. This is proved by the fact that it has been found possible to change some of them, at least slightly, in the laboratories, as I just said. And on a massive scale around the Earth, around the world, even more so. External radiation exposure during creation and right after the flood provided a window of vastly greater external radiation, leading to immensely greater deterioration of parent elements. Also, let me capitalize that. Juxtaposition of greater amounts of parent elements in the past equals greater deterioration. Experiments with decay of two artificial isotopes thought to be the most sensitive to change in atomic structure, beryllium-7, and an excited state of technetium-99, have shown that the decay rate can be changed, but the change is extremely small, and we fall. But then we're talking about laboratory scale, right? Not worldwide scale or universe scale. These changes were due to changes in the chemical compounds of which the elements were a part, but similar small changes in certain decay rates can be affected by pressure. Dr. Don R. Patton, this guy is a genius. He knows how to present his case by having the enemy make his case up for him. And then he concludes, there has been in recent years the horrible realization that radio decay rates are not as constant as previously thought, nor are they immune to environmental influences. And this could mean that the atomic clocks are reset during some global disaster, and events which brought the Mesozoic to a close may not be 65 million years ago, but rather within the age of memory of man. Frederick B. Juneman, FAIC, Industrial Research and Development. A voice of uniformitarianism. Agreement of data from different methods does not verify those results, especially when they're skewed, or some are not selected because they don't like the number. So they pick the ones that best suit their purpose. Uranium and thorium are often found together in the same mineral, for example, and although calculations of the age are usually discordant, they all occasionally agree. With respect even to the case of a mineral containing only uranium, Brown says, now there are 4 different ways we can compute the age of the mineral, namely from the ratio of lead-206 to uranium-238, or 2, the ratio of lead-207 to uranium-235, different number, 3, the ratio of lead-206 to lead-207, and the ratio of helium to uranium. Ideally, all 4 of these ages should agree, and no estimate can be considered trustworthy unless at least 2 independent methods, 2 of the first 3 here, agree. But unfortunately, complicating factors often produce discrepancies in evaluating a given sample. Harrison Brown, The Age of the Solar System, Scientific American. That's no Johnny-come-likely periodical, is it? There is even more commonly disagreement between uranium and thorium ages, but again, there is occasional agreement. As more and more evidence was gathered, the lead method began to carry conviction. There could be little doubt when pure thorium minerals associated in the same rocks with pure uranium minerals gave the same absolute age. O.B. Munich, Determining Geologic Age from Radioactivity. Scientific Monthly. There are now known even a few cases where there is agreement between ages obtained by the lead method, the rubidium method, and or the potassium method. There is good reason to present the state of progress at this time, since the newer techniques have already provided